Hello, today we will be presenting on the art movement Neoclassicism. So our presentation will be broken down into multiple different segments. The first will be the introduction, then we'll go over the origins and we'll contextualize the beginning of Neoclassicism. Then we'll talk about its characteristics and then three different artists from this movement: Jacques-Louis David, Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres, and Angelica Kaufmann. Afterwards, we'll talk about the influence, impact, and challenges of neoclassicism. Then we'll finish with the conclusion, and you'll be able to see the references that we used in the end. So, when we mention famous art movements, the Renaissance often comes to mind. It is arguably the most famous art movement globally, and not only for its artworks such as the Mona Lisa or the Last Supper, but also its cultural impact and influence on later art movements. This is when the distinction of different art movements start to become a bit blurry for some. So many see classical-looking paintings depicting grand scenes, heroes, and gods, and they often assume that it's Renaissance art. However, many of those artworks belong to a later movement called Neoclassicism, which is what we'll be presenting today.
Neoclassicism is based on the arts of ancient Greece and Rome, and it rises in interest because of new archaeological discoveries in Pompeii and Herculaneum in Rome, and it is influenced by the order, simplicity, and proportion of ancient Greek and Roman arts due to the popularity of the Grand Tour. It is emerged as a direct opposition of the Baroque and Rococo style. Antiquarians and engravers who thoroughly study and document ancient Roman building sculptures and artifacts play a big role in founding Neoclassicism arts movement. Characteristics of Neoclassicism mainly include a revival of ancient Greek and Roman style, emphasizing order, simplicity, and symmetry. And Neoclassicism is inspired by ancient Greek and Roman arts through the uses of classical elements like columns and pediment, and its simplicity is characterized by its rejection of Baroque and Rococo and can be seen in its uses of straight lines, simple geometric forms, and restrained color palettes. Neoclassicism emphasizes order, symmetry through balanced composition, mirror-like arrangements that reflect classical perfection and harmony, and adherence to classical rules of proportion and structure.
I'll be presenting the French painter Jacques-Louis David, who was born in 1748 in Paris and died in 1825 in Brussels. So he was born during the excavations of Pompeii and Herculaneum, which was the beginning of the rise of the interest in ancient Greek art and Roman art. So he won the Prix de Rome in 1774, which is a French scholarship given to students so they could study in Rome. And so with this, he started his academic training in arts, and he visited the ruins of Herculaneum and became interested in neoclassical doctrines. So he started painting the neoclassical style and earned the praise of many for his huge paintings depicting classical themes. And with this newfound success, he served briefly as the artistic director of the leaders and the martyrs of the French Revolution, and was even viewed as a culture hero thanks to that, and maybe even as a messiah. He was a politically engaged artist during the French Revolution, but many called him a hypocrite after he ended up a government artist for Napoleon Bonaparte, the French emperor, and became his political propaganda painter. So notable works of Jacques-Louis David are The Death of Marat, which depicts the assassination of the radical activist of the French Revolution, Jean-Paul Marat. And so with this painting, he transformed traditional history painting, which was usually reserved for biblical or classical narratives, by David depicting a scene from contemporary events. And so for the center image, the painting by Jacques-Louis David, the consecration of Emperor Napoleon I and the coronation of Empress Josephine, marked David's first artwork as the first painter of the imperial court of Bonaparte. And this serves as a turning point in the French history, which is why it's so famous. It created a rupture from republican ideals during the French Revolution, but also a shift from monarchy in France, which has been present for centuries, to an empire. And finally, on the right, we can see the painting The Death of Socrates, which is one of the most recognizable neoclassical paintings which depicts Socrates willingly dying from poisonous hemlock instead of renouncing his ideas. So illustrates the neoclassical ideologies, the noble death of a Greek philosopher around his disciples and those he influenced, and he died by resisting unjust authority. The artwork that I chose to present of David is the Oath of the Horatii in 1784. Roberta Smith, an art critic, says that this is a veritable cornerstone of neoclassicism, which is why I chose to present it. It's one of the most famous works of the neoclassical movement. So, with this painting, which was exhibited in 1785 in Salon in Paris, David was acclaimed as the greatest French painter since Poussin, and it became a metaphor for the French Revolution. So, to contextualize, this painting depicts the three Horatii brothers which are about to engage in combat against the three Horatii brothers to settle the war between Rome and Alba Longa around 669 BCE. In the center, we can see Horatii Senior, which is their father, and on the right, we can see three weeping women, which are the Horatii sisters, and the Horatii sister as well, and two weeping children. So, what makes this story so interesting is that even though they have to fight to the death, they're not fighting three random brothers. They're actually fighting the husband of one of their sister. In fact, one of the Horatii sisters is married to one of the Horatii brothers, and one of the Horatii sisters is married to one of the Horatii brothers. But this became a metaphor for the French Revolution because the three Horatii brothers actually choose to fight even though they know that their sisters are weeping. So this is supposed to show how men of the French Revolution should prioritize political ideals over personal matters. But this is not only a painting of the bravery, but also about the cost of the duties of a warrior. It's not only the painting of the grandeur of three warriors willing to sacrifice themselves for Rome, but also about the sacrifice of a father about to lose two of their sons, which will die in the battle. Only one Horatii brother will come back alive. But it also shows the tragedy of children that have to grow up without a father in the name of Rome. So Jacques-Louis David's style is very distinctive. As one of the giants of neoclassicism, it's pretty easy to recognize it. So we can see at first glance a Greco-Roman inspiration, but he also uses his style to convey a moral, most of the time valor and nobility, such as also the Horatii. But we can also see within his paintings linear designs, geometric lines, and order within his compositions. We can always split it into very straight lines. For example, in the top, with Oath of the Horatii, we can separate it into 3/3. The left with the Horatii brothers, the middle with the father, and the right with the women and the children. And for the death of the Maha at the bottom, we can divide it into two parts. Maha, which is dead, but on the right, him writing down the names of potential people who will betray him. And so one of the few distinctions we can see with his paintings is that everything is there for a reason. There are very few distractions, and everything painted has a reason to be there. And the last thing we can recognize from his style is that he will also be painting contemporary political events, or if he paints narratives from the past, these narratives always mirror political events currently. For example, contemporary political events, the death of Maha at the bottom, and at the top, the narrative of the Oath of the Horatii brothers will mirror French Revolution. So how did Jacques-Louis David influence others? So after being elected to the National Convention in 1792, he gained a lot of power through his association with Robespierre, one of the biggest heads of the French Revolution. And so with this power, in 1793, he became the art dictator of France. Essentially, what this means is that all the art during this period had to be in the same manner that Jacques Louis David would make his art. So with this, he trained and indoctrinated hundreds of young painters such as Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres in the neoclassical system, and this is not just in France but all across Europe. Later, he was exiled in Belgium, and he also trained and influenced Brussels artists, for example, François-Joseph Navet. And after the indoctrination of neoclassicism throughout Europe, Romanticism was created as a rejection of order and rationality in art. So neoclassicism was pretty short-lived because Romanticism afterwards, although it borrowed a few of the neoclassical doctrines, it emphasized more individuality and emotions and imagination rather than pure technical skill and order. So a big part of Romanticism was the creative spirit is more important than the adherence to rules. But Romanticism still does draw inspiration from um, ancient Greek and Roman myths.
Hello, today I'll be talking about Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres, a French neoclassical painter. He was born on August 29, 1780 in Montauban, France, and died on January 14, 1867 in Paris. Ingres was born into an artistic family. His father was a painter and a sculptor who encouraged his talent from a young age. He studied under Jacques Louis David, one of the most important neoclassical artists of France between 1797 and 1800. In 1801, Ingres won the Prix de Rome, a prestigious art scholarship, and went to study in Italy. There he developed his famous move and precise painting that focused on clean lines and ideal beauty. His work later influenced many famous artists such as Degas, Matisse, and Picasso, especially through his strong focus on line art form. Ingres believed that art should be based more on reason, order, and beauty rather than on emotion, a view that defended classical tradition during the rise of Romanticism. Overall, Ingres is remembered as the master of line and form and one of the key figures who kept neoclassicism alive in the 19th century. Now, now we're moving on to this slide, and I'll be talking about three of the most known works by Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres. The first one is the Appetites de Mier, painted in 1827. This artwork celebrates the ancient Greek poet Homer, showing him being covered in the figure of victory and surrounded by great artists and thinkers from different eras. It represents Ingres' belief in classical ideals, harmony, perfection, and respect for ancient art. The second one is Portrait of Madame Moutier, completed in 1856. Ingres spent years perfecting this portrait. It shows that Madame Moitié in elegant detail, dressed richly and sitting gracefully. The painting is admired for its smooth texture, precise lines, and how it captures both beauty and dignity. For the third one is the La Grande Odalisque, painted in 1814. This artwork shows the reclining naked woman inspired by Orientalism. Although these body proportions are slightly exaggerated, Ingres did this intentionally to create a sense of elegance and idealized beauty. It's one of his most famous and discussed works because it combines classical styles with sensual exotic themes. Now for this slide, I'm choosing this painting to talk about. This painting, titled Napoleon on his imperial throne, was painted by Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres in 1806. In this in this artwork, Napoleon is shown as a powerful and almost divine ruler. He sits frontally on his throne, wearing royal robes and holding imperial symbols, the scepter and on his hand. His pose is very symmetrical and commanding, which makes him a lot, and almost like a god. Ingres intentionally based Napoleon's pose in Jupiter, the king of the Roman gods. By doing that, symbolized the divine power, the absolute authority, and the grandeur of the French Empire. Now, this painting perfectly represents Anglo neoclassical style, focused on symmetry, line, and ideal beauty. Now, for this slide, I'm talking about Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres' style. Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres had a very unique and recognizable art style. He was known for the smooth and the precise line, focusing more on contour and clarity than on the color of the visible brushstrokes. Instead of rough texture, his painting looked clean, polished, and almost perfect. And he aimed for idealized beauty, where every figure was portrayed in elegance and perfection. Ingres also used calm and cool tones, giving his works a very refined and peaceful feeling. He carefully minimized brushstrokes so that the surface looks smooth, almost like a marble. What makes Ingres interesting is how he blended classical and little bit of emotional elements. Even though he followed strict neoclassical principles like order and balance, he still added a little bit subtle romantic feelings to make his figures a little bit more alive. Overall, this art combined this discipline and emotion, showing beauty through control and precision. Now, for the next slide, I will talking how Jean-Auguste Domin Ingres influenced others. During the 19th century, 18th century, Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres had a very strong influence on French and modern art. In 1825, he was elected as a member of Académie des Beaux-Arts in Paris, which was one of the highest honors for the French artists at that time. At the same year, he was also appointed as a director of the French Academy in Rome. As a director, Ingres trained many young painters and sculptors who later became key figures in French art, such as Hippolyte Flandrin, Theodore Chasseria, Paul Flandrin, and Henri Lehmann. He taught his students the importance of discipline, purity of line, and classical beauty. These ideas became the foundation of academic art education for many decades. Through his teaching and leadership, Ingres helped connect neoclassicism and romanticism, making sure that his precise style and ideals continued to shape artists even into the late 19th century. Ingres also influenced some of the most famous modern artists in future. As you know, Pablo Picasso was actually inspired by Ingres' portrait of Madame Morticia, and Henri Matisse was inspired by the La Grande Odalisque. So overall, Ingres' legacy lived on not only through his students but also through his evolution of modern art itself.
Angelica Kaufman, full name Maria Anna Angelika Kaufman, born on 13 October 1741 in Church, Switzerland, and died on 5th November of 1807 in Rome, Italy. She is one of the very first artists, the pioneer and leader of the neoclassical movement, and she's mainly known for painting and had a successful career in London and Rome. And she's a skilled portraitist, landscape, and decoration painter, and she was one of the only two female founders of the Royal Academy of Art in London in 1768, and she was elected to Rome's Accademia di San Luca, one of Europe's oldest and most prestigious art institutions, in 1765. These are some of her famous works, and today I'm gonna be President Paul one of a work called The Sorrow of Telemachus, 1783, and it was painted for Monsignor Honorato Caetani, and it shows a scene from French novel The Adventures of Telemachus, and it is based on the story of Telemachus, son of Odysseus. And in this scene, Telemachus' ship was just right near the island where Calypso lives, and she's telling her knights to stop singing the Odysseus praises because of his son's grief. Angelica Kaufman's style. The artist's style mainly blended classical ideas with Rococo grace and romantic sensitivity, and the Rococo and her style contained Rococo elegance with soft colors, delicate drapery, and graceful figures. Her way of portraying of a female is in the way of women emphasize intelligence and virtue more than the sensuality. And she often used pastel tones, warm lighting, and smooth transitions, and her paintings arranged figures in triangular or circular compositions for visual stability. And Angelica Kaufman, mainly influenced by paving the way of female artists and through our neoclassical style, and she helped shape neoclassicism through the classical themes of virtue, reason, and beauty in her paintings. She inspired future female artists to pursue professional art careers by being one of the first women admitted to the Royal Academy in London. Artists like Elizabeth Victory Lebrun from the same period as Angelica Kaufman will inspire her neoclassical styles too.
And now I will talking about the influence, impact, and challenges of neoclassicism. Let's start the first one first. The first influence. Neoclassicism strengthened art by bringing back ideas of simplicity, proportion, and discipline. It emphasized clarity and moral purpose, qualities that made it not only for artistic style but also a philosophical one. It influenced painting, sculpture, literature, and even architecture, where buildings were designed to symbolize power, order, and civic virtue. Through these qualities, Neoclassicism turned art and architecture into form of visual language, a symbol of rationality and social order. Now for the impact of Neoclassicism. A shift of themes. One major impact was the shift of themes. Neoclassicism replaced the playful, decorative Rococo with more serious subjects that express moral duty, heroism, and civic responsibility. Artists and writers aim to create works that taught values rather than just please the eye. And for the public architecture, it also had a major effect on public architecture. Government used neoclassical architecture to project authority. Buildings such as courthouse, museums, and government offices often follow this style to remind citizens of order, democracy, and timeless ideals. Uh, and bridge to Romanticism and Realism. Interestingly, Neoclassicism also served as a bridge to later movements like Romanticism and Realism. While Neoclassicism emphasized order and restraint, Romanticism reacted by focusing on emotion and individualism. Realism in turn applied Neoclassicism discipline approach to everyday life. Now we will move on to the last one, the challenge of Neoclassicism. First is potential of stiffness. One of the main challenges of Neoclassicism was its potential of stiffness or lack of emotional depth, because it valued balance and control and control. Some critics felt that Neoclassicism works were too rigid or too cold. And the next one is the kind of lack of emotion. Related to that, another criticism was the lack of emotion expression. While neoclassical art was really beautiful, I, it sometimes failed to connect with people to an emotion level. It could feel too serious or detached.
So, in conclusion, neoclassicism was an art movement that emerged thanks to the new archaeological discoveries in Pompeii and Herculaneum. This is not to be confused with the art movement classicism. Classicism is the art produced during and after antiquity, but it has to be inspired from it. However, neoclassicism is art exclusively after antiquity and inspired from it. So the key takeaway is that neoclassicism was rejection of the Rococo art style to create order within art, and this heavily influenced the structure in academic art, emphasizing structure and technique and order, and it became the foundation of art academies after David's art dictatorship. And neoclassicism was served to remind the world that great art can come from discipline and education and not only from natural talent and imagination.